I don't like SRAM AXS. The only problem it solved was to eliminate a cable, and in doing so they added a battery that needs to be charged and electronic bits that I can't fix. This may not be the popular opinion, but I don't feel that it brings a single performance improvement to the table. It doesn't shift better, it's not easier to set up, and it costs a heck of a lot more. So when SRAM told us about their new transmission drivetrain, and I learned that it was only electronic, I was honestly a little bit turned off at first. But then SRAM sent us this Exo Grupo that I've got mounted up to my bike here, and I started to realize that this isn't just another meaningless update designed to get us to spend more money. Yes, it's still a derailleur, but the fact of the matter is that there are significant performance improvements on this drivetrain. And at the end of the day, this is honestly the best derailleur that I've ever used. Transmission brings with it a cosmic shift in how derailleurs operate, the omission of a part that's been integral to derailleurs since the 1980s when aluminum frame bicycles rose in popularity. You know what I'm talking about, that dangly little bit of aluminum that hangs off the back of our rear triangle, the replaceable derailleur hanger. Now, like Shimano did back in 2003, SRAM has released a derailleur that mounts directly to the frame. Unlike Shimano though, SRAM has primed the entire industry to accept this derailleur, counting upwards of 600 bicycles at this point. How did they do this? Well, the ever dubious Pink Bike commenters were right. The Universal Derailleur Hanger, or UDH, an open source, license-free, inexpensive part that was available to all, a part that was meant to make it easy for us to replace those pesky derailleur hangers anywhere we might be, was actually paving the way for transmission. But that's okay, because derailleur hanger standardization was long overdue and SRAM made it happen. Along with that, they answered the question of whether derailleur hangers still need to even be there. The answer, it seems, was no. Oh boy, it feels good to be able to kneel all the way down. It's been about a month since I smashed my leg testing out the new Smuggler with Logan in our last video. But I'm back on the trail now, my first ride back in 4 weeks or so, testing out SRAM's new transmission drivetrain. Now, you may know that I never really got along with SRAM AXS, their previous electronic drivetrain, but this is a whole different beast. And we're out here on trail, putting it through its paces, feeling how it shifting under load, doing all the things that you used to not really be able to do or not do well, and we're gonna put it through its paces. Then we're gonna take it back to the test lab and use our whacking device to see how it holds up to some real abuse. But basically, I want to give you guys an idea what this thing's all about. So one of the things we noticed about this derailleur is that it actually sits a little more flush, so you can get through stuff like that without as much worry. Those early aluminum frames I mentioned couldn't just be bent back into place in the event of a crash like their steel predecessors. The solution was to make a thin, replaceable piece of material that could be replaced, saving your frame in the event of a crash. But having all this hanging off a very thin, flexible piece of material was never ideal, and it's gotten worse as we've shoved more and more gears into roughly the same amount of space. If you've used one of today's 12-speed systems, you know how finicky they can be, and no matter how stiff you actually make the rear derailleur itself, it's still hanging off your frame by a thin piece of metal. With transmission, SRAM has made the entire rear end incredibly stiff by virtue of attaching it directly to the frame. In doing so, they've made a system that shifts like the purported dream that their marketing team makes it out to be. Now, is it actually more durable than previous systems? Well, we are going to answer that question for you. Fun! But first, let's see what else they've changed. So one thing that we noticed at the shop is that when you dump a bunch of gears, the derailleur seems to take its time working its way up and down the cassette. Now what that is it's using the cassette mapping, the specified points along the cassette, and the chain is waiting till it hits one of those points to move up, making it really smooth shifting. It feels kind of weird in the parking lot, but when you're on trail, what I've noticed is that, like just happened in the snow back there, I just dumped all those gears and kept laying down power, and the derailleur made its way up as it could, and as it could keep power down at the wheel, and allowed me to push through and keep going without really thinking about when and where I was shifting. Will SRAM transmission shift on the moon? Now I know a lot of you have been wondering, without that sacrificial piece in there, once you hit this thing on a rock, what's gonna break? Well, the truth of the matter was that with existing 12-speed stuff, if you hit your derailleur on a rock hard enough to break or bend the hanger itself, typically the derailleur was toast too. These things are so finicky that having the slightest bend anywhere in this system meant that you now have an expensive piece of trash. Like SRAM has done with their Charger 3 damper, for example, this thing is now entirely rebuildable, which is something I'm really stoked about. The new derailleur can break down into 6 separate pieces, from the pulley cage to these skid plates out here, so you can keep it looking fresh, even if you just scuff the thing. I, for one, am super excited about that, and it means that when you do hit this thing, if something does break, you're just replacing a single part as opposed to the entire assembly. Like I mentioned earlier, this system is only electronic. That actually brings with it some benefits besides a cleaner cockpit. It means that there's no more limit screws, something that actually the current generation of Axis didn't require, but SRAM felt would be a little too confusing for all of us by removing them quite so soon. Because of the way that the servo motor in here and the gearbox functions, it just knows when it reaches the end of where it's supposed to be. With this new design, there's also no B-tension screw. There's simply this 2-position setup key down here. You can find which one your bike needs on the SRAM AXS app or on their website, but you simply pick the right one and off you go. On the handlebar end, SRAM has gone completely back to the drawing board. With AXS, they designed the remote to look roughly like a mechanical shifter, which I thought was silly, and I actually never got along with the old remote. Here, they've designed something they called the pod, because I imagine of how it looks, and it is attached to the handlebar by this infinity clamp. This gives us a huge number of different ways to set this ambidextrous thing up, and in my opinion, they've done a much better job with it. I could never quite get the old remote exactly where I want it. This, however, it's a non-issue. The buttons on here are large and easy to press, and it comes with 2 different rubber pads. One's concave and one's convex, to dial in exactly how you like it. Now, the old Axis remote is actually the only part of the Axis system that is forwards compatible. So if you decide you do like the old one better than this new pod, you can opt to run that as well. Now, transmission is only an electronic system. There is no cable actuated one. One of the things I didn't like about Axis was that you can forget to charge your battery. Now, I actually owned a bike that had Axis on it, an Evil Following a few years ago that I really liked, and I actually got along fine with the battery. I never forgot to charge it and found myself out of luck. However, it is something to consider. Also, with transmission, they are saying that it will last slightly less long. That's because there's a bit more resistance in the system in there, so it just uses up the battery quicker. So definitely something to remember. Like I said, I never found it to be an issue, but one extra thing to think about. SRAM has made a big deal about shifting under load with transmission. Let's examine how they've accomplished that. The new Cassette sits 2.5 millimeters further outboard than the previous models, and it is not compatible with previous Eagle generations. It does still sit on an XD driver, and it does go from 10 to 52 teeth, but that is about the only similarities. This new Cassette addresses a complaint a lot of people had about the old Eagle Cassette, and that was gear spacing. The new Cassette changes these last 2 cogs versus the old one to make things a little smoother. It jumps from 32 here on the 4th one down up to 38 and then 44 teeth before jumping up to that last 52 tooth cog versus 32, 36, 38, and then 52. The construction of these 2 cassettes also differs significantly. With the old Eagle cassettes, SRAM used their X-Dome technology to machine almost the entirety of the cassette from a single piece of steel, that's this gold portion here, and pin an aluminum cog to the back. With the new transmission cassette, they've used that X-Dome technology to machine the first 9 cogs, the smallest 9 cogs. Then these 2 cogs are stamped steel pinned on here with an aluminum one on the back. Now, why have they done this? I imagine it has something to do with all these extremely intricate ramps that you'll see around the entirety of the cassette, significantly more so than on previous Eagle cassettes. Now, from narrow wide teeth on the smallest cog here, the 10 tooth cog, up to all these teeny tiny intricate little ramps throughout the entirety of the cassette, This is the secret as to how SRAM transmissions shift so well under load. An integral part of that shifting under load is the new chain, which we see here. It is now a flat top model, similar to their road chain, and SRAM claims it is their strongest chain to date, which actually gives me something to maybe test out in an upcoming video. But for now, let's keep it going. You'll see the new XO cranks here. These are aluminum cranks and are not, unfortunately, compatible with previous Eagle technology, but do have these cool new bash plates. That whole system is affixed to the crank arm itself with 8 pins now, or 8 screws rather, which is the same as their Quark power meter system, which can be mounted on here. I imagine it also helps receiving impacts on these bash guards. And all in all, I think this is a pretty slick setup. Transmission is available in 3 tiers. There's the XO model we see here with the aluminum cranks and the black chain. Then there is a lighter, slightly more expensive XX model that has some aluminum parts in the derailleur to bring down the weight, as well as hollow pins in the chain. It is no longer relegated to cross country. It's now, you will be seeing it on the World Cup enduro bikes. And for the cross country people out there, they have introduced an XXSL super light model that does away with some of these skid plates on the outside to, again, reduce weight. It has more carbon parts. I believe there's a carbon part of the pulley cage. There's also something called the magic pulley wheel, where it has teeth that can spin outside the spokes of the pulley. I have never ever had a stick jam that up, but maybe if you're racing elite level cross country, it's something you would worry about, so they have introduced that. And they use a much lighter carbon crank, well, slightly lighter carbon crank than the traditional XX model. All of these have power meters available to them if that's something you want to check out. And all of them are currently available as complete group sets, which will save you $100+ versus buying all the components piecemeal. At the current time, you can only buy them as a group set anyway though, so that's a non-issue. Now, let's get to the interesting stuff. Let's bring it back to the lab and start smashing this derailleur and figure out how it's gonna hold up.
I performed some calculations.
The whacker.
There's an easy way and there's a hard way.
That's good.
3, 2, 1.